morning. Can do better. Good morning.
Good morning.
There are special people in this room today, and these are the wonderful students. I want us to put our hands together for them. Let me quickly say this, that a few years from now, what you'll be learning in this place today will be put into action. We have just heard about the emergence of one of the new generation leaders in Ireland, the new Prime Minister in waiting. And so we believe that this is the beginning of training for some of you. We truly know that a few years from now, some of you will end up in the House of Commons, in the Manitoba Legislative Assembly, and in the corridors of power. And so part of what we're all about today is to share creativity and to be able to empower you to be leaders of the world, the new world. Let me also acknowledge the presence of other board members of Creative Foundation Incorporated. I have the Vice President, Ms. Melinda Lee. I have Mr. David Fatimei here. We do have some of our advisory board members who are not here this morning due to one engagement or the other. I also want to use this opportunity to thank our convener and coordinator, Yisa Akimbolaji, the man that spoke before. Yisa Akimbolaji is actually the brain behind Creative Foundation Incorporated. He is an artist extraordinaire. He has exhibited locally and internationally. And he was the former president of the Manitoba Society of Artists and a current member of the Manitoba Arts Council. I want to use this opportunity as well to welcome very especially our guest speaker, Mr. Douglas, the Executive Director of Manitoba Arts Council. You're welcome, sir. This program today is made possible by the sponsorship and support of the Multicultural Secretariat of the Manitoba government. And so we are very, very grateful for that. Before I finally round up this particular session of welcome, I also want to acknowledge a very important person right in our midst here. I want us to put our hands together for the teachers that came with you. You know, the best profession in the world is teaching. And most of us will not be where we are today without teachers. So we want to show our gratitude. I also want to recognize Bob. Can we put our hands together for Bob, Try Education? And he led that organization very well. I happen to be a board member of that organization. Now, today's event will not make any sense or will not even happen without our speakers. And so I'm going to introduce them very, very briefly because I will still we'll hear about their bio very shortly. But can you join me in welcoming Randy Guest? He's a filmmaker. Becky Thiessen, visual artist. And Sue Hemphill, a diversity educator. At this juncture, it is my pleasure to invite Sue. Please come, Sue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sunday. So, can everybody hear me all right? If I'm working this way? Yeah, that works for you? All right, well, I have the pleasure of welcoming, and to build on what Isa was saying about acknowledging that we're on Treaty 1 territory and that we all are welcomed here by First Nations peoples. We have the privilege of an elder and his helper drummer with us today who will help in this welcoming that we're doing and also bring some good words for blessing for our region. And now I'm going to read you a little bit about Albert. Albert McLeod is a status Indian with ancestry from I should have asked you how to pronounce this.
Nisitjuwea Sikh.
Nisitjuwea Sikh? Okay, let's all practice skills of being intercultural communicators and stretch ourselves like I just did in front of you to say that with after Albert. Say it one more time for us. Nisitjuweyasik. Nisitjuweyasik Cree Nation and the community of Norway House in northern Manitoba. He has over 20 years experience as a human rights activist and is one of the directors of Two-Spirited People of Manitoba. Albert lives in Winnipeg, where he works as a consultant specializing in HIV, AIDS, and Aboriginal peoples, Aboriginal culture, cultural reclamation. That's a high-level intercultural term, and we're going to be learning some language today. So he's specializing in HIV and AIDS and Aboriginal peoples, Aboriginal cultural reclamation, textile art, and cross-cultural training. Will you join me in welcoming
So good morning. I won't take too much time, but I wanted to welcome you to this event and the important aspect of learning about multiculturalism. We are a multicultural society, a multicultural country, and we do influence around the world the way people perceive human rights and indigenous rights as well. So my ancestry is one, as you in my short bio, talks about the early immigration to Canada by Europeans in the early 1800s. So my ancestors were Scottish. My name is Albert William MacLeod, and I'm actually named after my ancestors, and that's the tradition in the Scottish clans that we pass forward the names of our ancestors. So my name has been passed forward. I also have an Ojibwe name because I am from the north of Manitoba, the Paw, and I've lived in Winnipeg for around 40 years and been adopted into the local Ojibwe culture. So that is a tradition as well among Indigenous peoples in Canada. When the stranger arrives or the orphan, the tradition is to adopt that person and to care for that person and teach that person how to integrate into the culture. So my name is Mashkide Gizik. That means prairie sky. So I have a Ojibwe name and an English Scottish name. So that's a part of my identity. And it keeps me centered in the life that I have in Winnipeg. I come from a rural life, a land-based, growing up on the land, and been living urban. And I try to balance that as well in my life, that I do continue to go to ceremonies in the countryside and go and visit in the north to maintain those sort of cultural links that cement my identity and give me a foundation. So in the Aboriginal culture, because in this part of the world the Indigenous people were semi-nomadic, which meant they traveled across the land, we have the medicine wheel, which is a directional guide for people who are semi-nomadic or nomadic peoples, and we use the stars and the land as a way to navigate so that we're safe, so that we're fed, and so that we enjoy life. It's not just all about work, it's also about enjoying everyday life, enjoying everyday family. So in the east doorway, that is one of our cardinal directions. The south doorway is very important, the western doorway. And we believe that in the western doorway, we leave the physical realm. So that's when people die. And we go to the north doorway, which is the spirit world. So many cultures have an understanding of spirituality and a spiritual dimension. And a lot of Canadians consider that heaven. For Aboriginal people, we call it the spirit world. We also have the other direction is below us. What's below us and what's above us. So what's above us, besides this hotel? The sky. What's in the sky? Clouds, planets, stars. Birds. And so those are part of the Aboriginal culture, the Aboriginal worldview, and they're integrated in how life is interpreted. So those are 6 directions. The 7th direction is us. the human experience, because we're kind of unique. We're not trees, we're not plants, we're not rocks, and we really rely on nature to survive, and we rely on each other. So we're social people. We need each other, and that gives us joy. We love our children, our grandchildren. So all of those teachings are embedded not only in the Ojibwe culture, but the Scottish culture as well, and probably within your family as well. You'll find those aspects of your identity today and meaning. So today you're below the ground, and after this session you will ascend up to the world, take all your knowledge. So that's what we're very conscious in the Aboriginal community about, is our social location. Where we are, what direction we're moving in, why we're moving in that direction, and what will be the outcome of that movement. So we're always planning ahead into that next direction. So as mentioned, in the future, you will use your skills around multicultural knowledge, multicultural relationships. And myself, I work today, and I manage in my office 2 Facebook groups, because Canadian businesses understand today that Facebook is an important communication key, and you may not be using it in school, but in many organizations they use Facebook as a way to connect with their target population. So I manage those 2 Facebook groups. I myself take the photographs that I post, so I don't have to worry about copyright issues. And I also create the art that's required. If I have to make a poster or whatever, I use Publisher or Windows, whatever I can get my hands on to create communication tools. So it's a very fast-paced work environment. People have iPhones, iPads, all kinds of ways of communicating, and it happens very quickly. So you have to be creative in being able to grab people's attention, because there's so much information, so many visuals going past you, there's YouTube videos, all of that. So you're in a competitive field. And so just to think about that in moving forward, and what kind of skills and experiences you'd like to express, and what tools you want to do that. Recently with Randy, I was at the Dinaway, which is a youth drop-in in the North End, and I decided to make bannock one night. And so I made this bannock recipe, fried up the bannock up, and Randy filmed me. And that's called, just trying to think, the term for it is, I can't remember, but what happened with the youth is that they could smell the bannock cooking. And for them, that was a sense of comfort. And so it wasn't just using a visual tool, this was using aroma, right, to create a sense of family, a sense of comfort. And then they came into the kitchen and took all the fried bread out into the gathering room, and they gobbled it all up. So for myself, in the Aboriginal community, culturally, we share food to create that sense of belonging, that sense of family, and it's called demonstrative culture, where I use my skills to make bannock in order to do that. The backstory of bannock in Canada is that when the first immigrants came here from Europe, they were here to trap furs, to gather furs, and they made a deal with the Hudson Bay Company. They said they would come to this country if they could have bread, because that was part of their culture, was having white bread, and that was part of the deal. So the early immigrants to Winnipeg were here to grow flour. There was 18 flour mills on the Red River, and on the Assiniboine River, and their job was to make this white flour. Now, because these men were traveling on the land, could they bake bread? No, they didn't have ovens. So they used a technique that was used in Europe to make soda bread, and it was called banach in the Gaelic language, and it became known here as bannock. So that they could take the soda, baking soda, flour, water, and some oil, and on the trail they could make a bread, and they could bake it on the fire, And so it was a way that the Hudson Bay Company ensured that the fur trade would continue. So my going to the drop-in to make bannock is not something that was lost in the past, it's something that exists today. So that's just a little bit about cultural history and how some things in culture are brought forward and understood and still used today. So I welcome you to this territory and also to learn about the other 5 treaties that are in Manitoba and those people who are under those treaties and the relationships that they created with Canada and with Manitoba as well. And I want to introduce Harmony Knott. Harmony is Ojibwe Cree from northern Manitoba. Harmony lives in Winnipeg, and Harmony is an excellent singer, and she's going to do a welcoming song for you in Ojibwe.
Bonjour, my name is Harmony Knott, that's my GSD name. My name is Midnight Songbird Flying Woman. I am a gender non-conforming person, but I am a two-spirited person. I've been a gay kid, I've been a trans teen, so now I'm a gender non-conforming, which I am saying, you decide who I am. I'll accept that. So, with this song I'm going to be singing is called the Welcoming Song. I'm asking the 4 important things to come and join us here today. And since I've been unable to close, so I'm just going to leave these spirits with you. Since you're young, I need them around you constantly. So I will not close, but I don't have a drum with us today. We miscommunicated today. We just rolled out of bed too, so. So when I sing, my singing is a form of prayer that I'm calling to the spirit world. And I'm asking that spirit world to get Creator to come with us in this room. I'm going to ask your spirit to come with us in this room. I'm going to ask the grandmothers to come and join us in this room. And I'm going to ask the grandfathers to join us in this room. And once I open, that doorway opens, there's, as you can see, with the medicine wheel, there's 4 directions. And I'm welcoming 4 people in here. The Creator, your spirit, the grandmother's spirits, and the grandfather's spirits. And usually sometimes, if you'd like, just think about your past grandmothers, your past grandfathers. They'll come and join you today. Just think about them while I'm singing. And just know the fact that they'll be here. They're always there, but they'll be here in a greater spirit. How do I say that? A much more of a powerful spirit that they'll be here. So this is a cappella, so I gotta maintain my focus. Ombe, ombe, ma bindige. Mani tu ma bindige. Akina ma bindige. Nimosho ma bindige. Hey ya ya. Noko ma sa bindige. Hey ya ya. Ombe ombe ma bindige. Mane tu ma bindigen, akina bindigen, nimosho ma bindigen, hey ya ya, noko ma sa bindigen, hey ya ya. Ombe ma bindige. bendigen, akina bendigen, nimo shoma bendigen, hey ya, noko masa bendigen, hey ya. Ombe ma bendigen, hey mane tu ma bendigen, akina ma bendigen, nimo sho ma bendigen, hey noko masa bendigen, hey
Thank you, Albert. That was tremendous. Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Melinda Lee, as Sunday has introduced earlier. And please feel free to come in and out to stretch your legs if you need. But we will be getting breaks throughout the day, and later on, Sue will go through the whole schedule of events. And as Sunday had mentioned earlier, our Minister of Multiculturalism was unable to make it today. However, she has brought greetings as well as our Mayor of the City of Winnipeg, so I would be happy to read those out to you. And then as soon as I do that, I'm going to call Sue to come up and to say a couple of words to introduce our very exciting story. I'm going to start off with the Minister of Multiculturalism, the Honorable Flora Marcelino, and this is her message. Welcome all students and workshop presenters to the Multicultural Harmony Through the Arts. Congratulations and thank you to the Creative Foundation for organizing this fun and educational workshop. This event gives students an important opportunity to learn from Manitoba's most talented and experienced artists in the area of visual arts, film production, and intercultural and diversity. It also provides participants a chance to discover the multitude of cultures and diverse background of people who call Manitoba their home. Learning about multiculturalism through the arts helps create a more inclusive society and leads to understanding, acceptance, and celebration in diversity. Best wishes for the continued success of Creative Foundation projects. Have a memorable and productive day. And this is from our Mayor, His Worship, Brian Bowman. It is my pleasure to welcome everyone attending the 2015 Multicultural Harmony Through the Arts workshop hosted by the Creative Foundation. Our greatest strength as a city is our rich diversity and tradition of celebrating together. Winnipeg is also home to a tremendously vibrant and innovative artistic community, and today's event is a fun opportunity that brings our diversity and art together. Exploring other cultures and traditions through the visual arts, film production, drumming, and mime theater is a terrific way to learn about our world and each other and build understanding. It takes initiative, vision, and hard work to make an event such as this happen, and I would like to recognize the contribution of the organizers and volunteers for making this event possible. Thank you all for continuing to positively enrich our community through sharing arts and culture. You make Winnipeg a place we are all proud to call home. On behalf of the City of Winnipeg and my City Council colleagues, best wishes for a great event. Warmly, Mayor Brian Bowman, City of Winnipeg. And very shortly, we will have our keynote. I would like to call upon Sue, but before I do so, I would like to thank our keynote, Mr. Douglas Risk, for coming and basically sharing with us a very important message, as well as telling us a little bit about his organization. And I will get Sue to come up to introduce him. He is a wonderful man from what I hear, and I know that he's going to inspire all of you. And he wouldn't tell us what he's going to speak about. He said that he wanted to surprise us, because I think it's going to be that good. So I will call upon Sue, and we'll do a little more formal introduction in a moment with her.
So I can do the podium, I just can't do it a bunch of times in one day. And for Douglas, I will definitely step up. So I'm going to read you Douglas's bio, which you can find on the Manitoba Arts Council website if you're curious to take this back to your school. And then I'll just say a few words of my own experience, firsthand experience with Douglas. Douglas Risk has been Executive Director of the Manitoba Arts Council for the past 17 years. He has over 40 years experience in Canadian professional arts and cultural sector, including working as an actor, a stage manager, a director, an artistic director, a producer, a consultant, a teacher, and a cultural manager. Trained at the Banff Centre of Fine Arts and the University of Alberta, Douglas has also studied in Europe and England. His work as an artistic director has taken him across Canada to theatres in Calgary, Edmonton, Kelowna, Richmond, Victoria, Vancouver, plus the Stratford Festival and Winnipeg's Royal Manitoba Theatre Centre. As an actor, he performed on stage as well as in film, television, and radio. Mr. Risk has also been active in various industry associations, including the Canadian Actors Equity Association, the Professional Association of Canadian Theatres, and the Canadian Public Arts Funders. He has received both the Queen's Silver and Golden Jubilee medals, recognizing his work in the sector. I had the privilege for 5 years to work at the Manitoba Arts Council, and that engagement ended about 7 or 8 years ago, so I've known you for about 13 years now. And I can honestly say that for the 5 years that I worked directly under Douglas, Douglas hired me, and for the 5 years that I worked directly under Douglas, of the almost 30 years career that I have had, he definitely is at the top of the list for people that I loved to work for. Working for Douglas was a joy. I felt I learned something all the time, whether it was in a staff meeting, at a public event, at an exhibit or performance, or in our supervision meetings, which we had regularly. So I feel very grateful because I feel like I was developed by you. And I felt very affirmed as well, and really, yeah, just I'm so happy to see him today. And Douglas is very close to retirement. Maybe he'll say something about that, but we got him while he was still at the Arts Council, and so join us all in welcoming Douglas for his keynote presentation.
Thank you very much for that. It's kind of funny sometimes to hear the story of your life flash before you, but that was very kind of you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, fellow audience members, students, lovers of the arts. Thank you for that song. I think that was absolutely a prayer. You know why it's sung at the beginning of any kind of gathering? Because it grounds you. It brought us all together for those moments. It was quite extraordinary. Just lovely. And I'll talk a little bit more about that, actually. And I just want to say a special thank you to Yisa. This guy never stops. Ever since I first, When I did first meet him at that Society art event, an exhibition I think it was, and he impressed me immediately, and of course started lobbying me immediately, and has been doing so ever since. And it's been a pleasure having him on the Arts Council for the last few years, because it has made a tremendous difference, I think, in terms of the subject that we're talking about today.
That's right.
Is essentially in the kind letter of invitation to talk today this one little line said, let's talk about multicultural harmony through the arts. That's all. Yes, it works, so what else do you want to say? Well, you know what? There are so many things to say, and I think we've started to experience them right now, today, in this room. And, but I'd like to, maybe, you've been sitting nicely and quietly for a while. I'd like a little exercise with you. Don't worry, nobody's going to be embarrassed. This is just at the tables, you can do this. I want to, the theme, and I take this actually from, and Yisa will remember, he served on the council with Judith Flynn, who was our chair. And at the time, Judith was a retired head of the Department of English. And actually there's some themes within this whole morning that I keep hearing Judith's voice in the background at various events and so on. But one of the areas that we used, or as a theme we used at one point, was art, it's what's inside. And then we used constantly, it's what's inside each of us, it's what's inside this room, it's what's inside our province, it's what's inside our families, it's what's inside everything we do. And that's a hard thing to get across to people right now, because there's been this bizarre gap that's been created for some reason between the arts and the experience of the arts and kind of our normal lives. And I know we'll hear a lot of people say, well, I have nothing to do with the arts, I never learned anything about the arts at school, who cares? And I go to Jets games, what do I care? And there's also that little split about I'm either sports or you're arts, you can't be both. But there are people who are both. But this is just a little example. I want you just quietly, close your eyes for a second, and I want you to think of an arts experience you've had in the last week or two. It can be in music, theater, dance, it can be reading a book, it could be something that you just remember, and I want you to just think about that for a moment. Talk to yourself about how did it touch you? How did it in some way, how did it inspire you? How did it even just bring a memory back that again had an important part in your life? Maybe just for those few moments, but maybe it's has a resonance that maybe you remember it every day for some reason. I know music does that to me a lot. What's that called? The worm, the music worm, or whatever it's called in your head that just keeps coming back and back and back. So just take a second. So I just remember what it looked like or felt like. Think of the words that describe what you saw and felt. Now, turn to the person to your left and tell them in about 30 seconds what was your experience like. Go. Okay, if you haven't had a chance to tell your story, just switch places in terms of saying, or just take a turn now and tell somebody else the story. Or allow them to tell their story. That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah, you gotta move around maybe a little bit. But you're okay. You can just do it back and forth.
It's about Jurassic World. Did you go and watch it? Yeah, I'm going to watch it. You want to watch it? I'll watch it on Friday. Anything you remember of the last week? I just think I'm going to move.
Okay, thank you. some of you could, isn't it interesting that some of you could probably go into great detail, and you can keep talking, and talking and talking, which is easy to do, especially when you're talking about yourself. Don't you find that's the great thing, is just talk about yourself. But I think what the point of this is that we probably had at least 40 different experiences, but there might have been a lot of similarities in some of the things you were talking about in terms of how you felt about this artistic experience, the words you used to kind of share this idea of what you were thinking, what you were feeling, how it touched you, and that might have resonated, and we hope it does, with the person you're talking to. Because then they'll start feeding back into that conversation about how they felt about similar. Have they ever felt the same way? If so, why? And when? And how? And you start this dialogue that's really, really important in terms of the artistic experience. And I think it's probably why we keep going back to artistic experiences, and why they're actually really a very normal part of our lives, and a really important normal part of our lives. I know this is sometimes a bit silly and embarrassing at first, but if we learn, and certainly those of us involved in this kind of work and in the arts, whether it's administrating the arts or being an artist or being part of explaining the arts to people, you've got to find those words, you've got to find those connections that actually open up your own experiences to others, and in doing so, they understand you, you understand them a little bit better. That's what the arts are all about. It's about how we share those experiences. When you think of great art, when you think of ordinary art, you can always get right down into the heart of it, and you'll find out that it's about a shared experience of some kind. It's how we learn. I think it's how we learn as kids. We probably have artistic experiences that we all shared as kids. You probably, as younger kids, had experiences that have actually helped form where you're going right now in your own life, and where you will go in terms of choices you're going to make. And I'll talk a little bit about those as we go through this. We share, we learn, and we start to understand ourselves, and in understanding ourselves, we start to understand other people. Now the arts tell us stories in all kinds of different ways. Randy and I were just talking, he was telling me about a little story he put on YouTube. How long ago was that?
A year ago June.
A year ago June, a little YouTube video that has gone semi-viral. Had tremendous response from people all around the world. What a different kind of experience that is now, to be able to share those kinds of experiences through those kinds of mechanisms that we have to share. But it still comes back to those personal experiences that you as individuals have and how you share them. That's how we learn again. That's how we grow in terms of understanding. And I think that comes back to this theme around multiculturalism, multicultural harmony. And I think we need to look at this over and over again in terms of our own society. And this may have something to do with the election we just had in terms of shared experiences. We've just seen an incredible example of shared experiences through, yes, every political party, but those of you who might have followed any of this, you know, you will remember certain experiences and certain messages because they touched you in some way. And that's what that's about. That's about, again, learning about how we participate in a democracy and how we share ideas and passions and cares. And Mr. Trudeau is an expert at sharing that kind of experience and his own personal passions. And that's an art form in itself. It's quite extraordinary. It's simple, but it's very difficult. It's not dry and boring. It's very, very exciting work. And Manitoba is known outside of our province and across the country as a hotbed of arts and cultural activity. But people also say it's not important that necessarily other people recognize it. It's what's, again, back inside our province, inside our communities, inside our schools, inside our churches and community centers, inside all of the activities you take part in. That's what makes a community vibrant, strong, and healthy. And then, then we might start to worry about how other people see us. But it's fascinating, and the studies that have been done that have shown where communities are not so concerned about always showing other people how wonderful they are, that they simply are strong and wonderful and caring and committed communities. Once that happens, people start to recognize it. You don't have to try. And even if you're not recognized, that doesn't matter, because you feel that your own worth and the worth of your community is strong and where it should be in terms of growth and change. So I'm challenging all of you to look inside yourselves, your basement storage rooms, your schools and classrooms. If some of you have jobs, go look around your workplace and out into your communities, community centers, malls, bowling alleys, wherever you go, and look around and see where the art exists. Everybody says, well, bowling alleys? What? Jets? What? But I know, and you know what, it's such a simple example. People were using this, and you know what, it's kind of depressing after 40 years to have to use this metaphor over and over again, but you have to use it occasionally because a lot of people either resist the arts as though it's somehow a little bit airy-fairy and it's something that only certain people do, and I think that still is maybe part of our Western, it's our Western European elitism about opera and music and symphonies and so on and so forth. But really we want to break that down, and we want to really just talk about how the arts are important to us, and it's inside us, and it's very, very inclusive. It's not only about the value of the arts, when we have to explain this to many people, it's about how we actually probably wouldn't have a very interesting world if we didn't have the arts. Back to the Jets, and saying, and this sounded so silly when the guy told it to me, but he used it with groups of people, especially football players and others, and tried to explain that if you took away the art from a Jets game, what would you have left? Well, think about it. Color, music, design, all sorts of things that are in a building that is designed to make you an audience member, or have you as an audience member enjoy and be part of that event. That, in fact, is an artistic event in many, many different ways. Sports likes to dominate in terms of that way, but if you go back to ancient civilizations, you'll find that actually the sports and the arts were together. They were together all the time, and any kind of celebration, it was a celebration of the human body as well as what you could accomplish with the body and the mind and the imagination. And so the Jets in boring, plain brown costumes might not work. But think about the music they use now and how that is about manipulating your particular emotions and passion in terms of that game. Every time you turn around and something happens, they're pumping up that music to get you going. And they're doing it very, very well. And those are artists who are actually manipulating the music and the sound and the light and the color and supporting those players on the ice. It's quite extraordinary, actually. So you can make a good living in the arts. That's a good example. Many people who either go into the arts end up in a kind of very commercialized version of an arts experience. But again, arts now are used to sell constantly. And if you look at anything that's going on in the world in terms of selling, you guys especially, you're the prime target. Just start looking at the ads for the stuff you want to buy. And look at how they present them. Look at the color. Look at the way the camera angles are. Well, look at all those kinds of things that actually encourage you to buy, make you want to buy, or don't make you want to buy. Turn you off and you say, yeah, I'm not interested in that. There's something wrong with it. Analyze it a bit and say, who did this? Why did they do it this way? And why am I feeling this way about it? Because I really don't like it. I don't want to look at this again. I know that comes with a lot of people who have a strong passion, who hear a piece of music and say they hate it. Well, wait a minute. Let's talk about why you hate it. But why is it doing that to you? Why are you disgusted by it? Why do you never want to buy that artist ever again in your whole life? It's all about how that artist is actually affecting your decision-making, your passions, and your emotions somehow. It's touching you in some way. Maybe you don't want to be touched that way. So that's kind of an interesting effect that, again, I think you need to be aware of as you grow and learn in this world. And you still get sucked in, though, every now and then. You can't help it. There are quality of life arguments for the arts. What would our lives, again, be like without the art? And certainly, I know in terms of community building and all kinds of things now, around the world, the arts and culture are regarded as economic drivers. They're very important to community life. Quality of life equals economic quality as well. And that's being pumped like crazy. Especially even Brian Bowman, the mayor, in terms of talking about downtown now. It's about how we're creating cultural districts. How are we getting everybody? Why do you want to go down to Market Square? You want to go down to hear music, or a multicultural celebration, or something else going on in the streets. Have you ever been to the Fringe? Go to the Fringe. There's how many? 10,000 people down there every night enjoying, I don't know, 35 productions of theater and music. What are they doing down there? Go and experience that once anyway. You may like it, you may not. That's part of the fun of it. Sometimes they're horrible, and sometimes they're quite amazing. But that's what it's designed to be. Experimental work. What's really wonderful is the cities who don't really, or the communities, necessarily support the arts that much, and we could talk a lot about whether or not tax money should go into supporting the arts. We think it should, because it's as important as streets and libraries and buses and all kinds of other things that are provided for all of the citizens. But it's interesting now that those cities who maybe are at a certain kind of cusp are starting to use more and more the actual work that goes on in their communities in the arts as a factor to draw people to come and live here and work here and say, this is a great place to be, because we even have stories of people coming from Toronto to see things here, because in Toronto, number one, they couldn't get near it because it's so far downtown and costs so much money, $40 to park your car at night, whereas here, you can enjoy every aspect of the arts with relative ease. Yes, we complain about the parking downtown and some of the prices and other things, but it's relatively safe on a good night, and it's relatively inexpensive. So we should appreciate that and celebrate that. And as it grows, we don't know where it's going to take us, though. I mean, that, especially for, how many of you go downtown regularly? Oh, look at that, you see? We need a cultural district, don't we? Yeah. We've almost got the beginning of one where people would feel comfortable and that would draw you down to all kinds of different experiences and make you feel comfortable as well. But that takes a lot of work, and it takes an infrastructure to get you down there, never mind a good bus system. The arts in this province are a growing, thriving industry. It's one of the most labor-intensive, cost-effective, efficient areas of the business sector, and one that deals primarily with a constantly renewable resource. And it has huge potential for growth, as I've just mentioned. I love the constantly renewable resource because really that's you. That's every generation. It's everybody who's going through school right now. And there will be people following you in terms of the arts and experiences, just as there are people following the engineers and the teachers and the other technical skills, workers. I always love the fact that the province announces we have just given $1 million to somebody to create 50 jobs for 5 years. And we said, I want to put up our hands. I'm sorry, the minister's not here, because she was our minister for a good 7 or 8 years, because we just kept making this argument is that an investment of $1 million in the arts creates more jobs would hire every one of you in this room when you're in your 20s and get you to stay and live in Winnipeg in a relatively successful career where you get an opportunity to do kinds of things you would never get in another community. That's what makes this a very special place right now, and we believe that we need to make that argument more and more in terms of those jobs being available for you when you come out of school and university and art school, etc., etc. And you can go to Toronto for training, but you come back here. It's a good idea. Wanted to just chat a bit. Sue mentioned her 5 years with the Manitoba Arts Council. Seems like ages ago, doesn't it? It is. But the Arts Council actually has a budget of about $9.5 million. As I said, Yis is on the board. We've got a board of 15 people appointed by the government. We've got a staff of about 20. We've got about 60 programs that support artists of all kinds and organizations of all kinds, from theater and dance and film to individual artists throughout the province. We have an Artists in Schools program with over, this year, 200 and some residencies in schools throughout the province. Randy's been part of that for years and years and years. Well, maybe not. Yeah, quite a few years. Becky, too. What's interesting is I know you don't care about these big numbers, but it's nice to hear them every now and then because it gives you a sense of how big this is in Little Manitoba. Because we only have 1.3 million people. That's not a lot of people. And the province provides about $8 per person to the Manitoba Arts Council, which is, again, a small amount of support. But the MAC-funded organizations had a total of performances, exhibits, or publications produced of 4,357. That's in 1 year. And total audiences of 1,354,000. 1,354,000 people attended events that we funded. That's extraordinary. Now, there's a lot of the same people going to this different things, but that doesn't matter. And in fact, I go out to speak like this and I talk to people who say, oh, well, I've been a supporter for 25 years. So every year they decide to go to they buy a subscription to a different event, which is a good thing you could do to find out what you really like. And there are good student subscriptions out there, by the way. We believe the arts have made a significant difference in our community. And I think one of the quotes that Judith Flynn was using was really, really important in terms of the comment she made. She said, when we look back from where we came from in terms of the arts and there's a whole bunch of organizations here that are 40 and 70 years old. And I'm sure you've seen and heard some of them. You mentioned the Royal Manitoba Theatre Centre. The Royal Winnipeg Ballet has been around forever. Tours the world. It's in Europe right now. It's playing in Amsterdam and in a couple places in France. But Judith, the quote she gave said, times were drastically different 40 years ago. And of course, I know you weren't here. But she said, we didn't lock our doors compulsively. We let our children play outside unsupervised until dark. We weren't asked to take our shoes off in airports. And there was still comfort to be had in the kindness of strangers. And the challenge is now we're facing a very different world. And I think this ties into the multicultural harmony issue, that this theme that we keep coming back to is how do we find ways of connecting communities and culture, through culture. We are in desperate need of understanding, acceptance, and empathy. And that brings me to probably the key of the keynote. Because, again, there is the wonderful quote that has to do with the fact that I'm going to read this straight, I don't want to paraphrase it. The arts, more than any other human activity, depend upon the employment of our imaginations. That's what I've been talking about since we started. That faculty, as John Stuart Mill, English writer, so memorably described it, by which one human being enters into the thoughts and feelings of another. Empathy. And I guess that's what we were just trying to do at the beginning of all this, is saying, can I tell you how I feel about this? And then you tell me how you feel about this and or other things that might be connected? How are we sharing ideas and feelings right now? And how did we react to each other? You know, how did we relate to each other? And where's the harmony, if you like, in terms of understanding each other and accepting each other, even if we don't agree, or we think quietly to ourselves, that was kind of goofy. Why would they feel that way? But that's okay. You can feel goofy about it, or they can feel goofy about it, but you've shared your goofiness, but you've shared something about yourself. And sometimes it's really deep and meaningful, and that comes when you're trusted by your friends, by your parents, by others, and you're able to, through an artistic product in some way, communicate to others and share your understanding of each other. They say that a healthy imagination is the source of human empathy, the habit of mind that stops us from seeing other people as objects. And maybe we've seen a lot of that in the news over the last few months, or as mere means to an end. How can I use this relationship to get somewhere else? But not about what does this person mean, what do they care about, and how can we work together to get somewhere else? This crucial human capacity is fostered and nourished by exposure to and participation in the arts. I just hope you can remember that and practice it occasionally. It's something that takes practice. There's a recent study by a group called Hill Strategies that we in the arts know about a lot. They're doing a lot of great work. But they suggest that people who participate in arts activities are better neighbors. What? How does that happen? Well, because, what we're just talking about. They're the neighbors who will talk to you across the fence. Or maybe they'll come around onto your side of the fence and talk to you and share what they're feeling about and what they're caring about today. And how can you interact in a way that's supportive, even if you don't agree with them sometimes? How do you support them and how do they support you? You build that relationship, and it's an empathetic relationship. The arts help us see beyond exteriors and preconceived notions. The arts help us see inside. So there you are. It's a nice, simple act. I guess I have one final example, because I was thinking about the age group here, and thank you very much for 40 years, 50 years, however long ago it was when I was in high school. And this is my sort of closing thoughts on shared experiences, because it was quite extraordinary. I hadn't been in the theater when I was in junior high school. This was in Edmonton, so we had a junior high school up to grade 9 and then the senior after that. And but I had a very nice teacher who got me kind of interested in grade 9 in some theater and reading stuff out loud and everything else, and I felt comfortable. It was nice doing it. Again, I thought sometimes it was kind of goofy, so I didn't really get that involved. I started to play around with it a bit, but when I decided to take a course in high school. Our school, East Glen High in Edmonton, had a full theater, meaning it wasn't a hole in the wall in a gym. This was a full theater, continental seating, full backstage area, rehearsal halls, workshop, everything. Fabulous. 2 drama teachers. So we did a lot of plays every year. We did a lot of workshops. We did all kinds of different things. It was quite extraordinary. But in that first year, as I got to know what was going on, the classes were interesting, but most interesting for me was I'd slip into the rehearsals for the first play of the year. And they usually did 2 or 3 plays. And the first play they were doing was The Diary of Anne Frank. I don't know if any of you have read it, seen it, heard it. It's an extraordinary book, and everybody needs to read it. And I must admit, as I sat there watching what they were doing in rehearsal, I thought, oh, this is really interesting. This is the art of the theater. I'd been reading some of those books. Oh, how are they doing this? And can I do this? And how much more do I need to learn? And how fast can I learn? Because it looked like it was kind of fun, especially because there was a cute girl playing Anne Frank. And that would be kind of nice to get to know her, which I eventually did. But what was amazing was when I went to the opening night and that house was full, the theater was full of parents and everybody else. There was 500 people there. what was so extraordinary was that that audience was absolutely mesmerized by the story, by the fact those student actors on stage were believable as the characters in the play. And you were transformed. You all of a sudden became part of that experience. And I'm sure you've had this happen, whether it be on film or theater or just even on a little screen. Sometimes it's mesmerizing. You're caught up emotionally in it, and you can't stop but feel something. And you don't even like sometimes what you're feeling. And Anne Frank's got a lot of those moments in it, that everybody was absolutely breathless. And they were enthralled and engaged in so many ways. Everybody knows also how the story ended. So, what was going on here? There was some amazing energy and attraction in that room to this experience. And it was also, I realized most importantly, which is why I then spent the next 40 years in the theater, is because it engaged every single one of those 500 people watching. We were all engaged in that artistic event, that it's artistic journey for 2 hours. It was absolutely extraordinary. There was emotional depth, there were tears, of course, there were all kinds of things, as I said, it changed my life, simply by being there that night, and then going to more and more. I'd come back every other night, and then I got into some productions of my own, and found that same excitement when you were on stage, and you could feel that energy coming from the audience. They were with you, they were part of you, and it was quite extraordinary. And I still love doing that. Maybe I'll do that when I retire, go back to being an actor, an old actor. But it again has certainly made my life meaningful, but I think the other thing in terms of the harmony aspect of this, multicultural harmony, is the theater and everything I've been involved with, especially with students, has had this energy behind it of building and caring for the people that you're working with and the audience you're playing to, and how you create those moments together. And I know I didn't even touch visual art, but that's the same kind of experience that in seeing a work of art, how you are drawn into it and you become part of it, and you become part of that story, and you share that story. And that's, I think, Isa could probably talk about that a lot. But that's your challenge. Use your artistic understanding and capacity and skills, which you're going to be talking about and working through, to bring harmony to not only multicultural relationships, but just to understand differences in each and every community and to respect those differences as they respect you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Risk. That was a great keynote.